sure. Thanks,
We're
man.
live.
We're live, guys. Welcome to episode 4 of Agora TV. Not much TV action going on, but we're working on it. We're trying to get better at this logistics behind the scenes, running all these different products. Today, we're doing a bit of a info session, educational session. Definitely not financial, legal, or accounting advice. I'm going to read this little boring disclaimer before we get going. The following material has been prepared for general educational purposes only and is not intended to provide and should not be relied on for tax, legal, or accounting advice or for any other purpose. OlympusDAO and its affiliates do not provide legal or tax advice. You should consult your own lawyers, tax, and accounting advisors to obtain advice relating to any transactions you have entered into or may enter into. All right, now that we've got that boring stuff out of the way, guys, morning, afternoon, evening, how are we? Let's get some introductions going. DaMoonsine, give us yourself. Go for it.
Hey guys. So I'm a CPA out of the U.S. Recently new into this DeFi space and Omen. I've been in now for a few months, watching my rebase stack up. So I'm excited to be helping out and see what we can do here.
Awesome. And I'll throw it to you, Naga.
Hey guys, this is Naga. I'm also a US-based CPA. Also very new to crypto. Got in basically for the first time after the spring crash and didn't become an Ohmie until middle of August. But once I heard about Ohm from other members in the Bowtie Jungle, got really passionate about it and wanted to learn more and help out.
Awesome. And last but not least, Omen.
Hey, thanks. My name is Omen. I am a lawyer. I used to work in, big corporate law and do big corporate law stuff. And became a startup lawyer after that. And now I work in Web3, and it's awesome. Full-time Web3. Loving it. And Omen is fantastic. Love Olympus.
Oh, well, we love the fact that you guys could join us here today. Really appreciate it. And I kind of just wanted to, we've done a little bit of prep, just trying to do a bit of trying to get the best outline and see what topics we can kind of touch on. But do you guys want to kind of give a brief overview of what we're talking or what we're looking to talk about today? We'll probably aim to run for about 45. And then the last 15, we'll look to kind of get some questions from people, as long as they're not questions pertaining to advice, then we should be fine. But we'll kind of look to aim for a 45-minute session. So if you guys want to kind of, one of you to give a bit of a brief overview of what we're talking about today, that'd be awesome.
Well, I'm going to jump in here. So we wanted to do like a little brief overview of how kind of regulatory agencies are looking at crypto and taxing crypto around the world. Around the world, there's not a lot of guidance, but some countries are taking it very specifically. Some are not really addressing it at all. So we wanted to touch on kind of what countries are doing what, and some general kind of overview of how it's being treated. We have some like in the U.S. Where it's being considered kind of property, and the IRS is the regulatory agent here who's kind of pointing towards property taxation guidance for crypto. So we also wanted to talk about a few kind of DeFi specific things, especially related to Ohm, and touch on kind of rebasing and how that may be treated or looked at by the IRS. So they don't really have much out there. So we're all kind of interpreting it to the best of our abilities, and we're all gonna kind of give our best intro to how crypto can be looked at.
Yeah, 100%. Did you, Naga and Omen, have anything else to add there?
Yeah,
Well,
I think those are. Sorry, I'm gonna go for it.
Go ahead, Naga, please.
I was just saying I think that's totally on point. Moonshine, and that lack of regulatory clarity, is a blessing and a curse in many ways. And I think that's really what we want to try and help Ohmies, not only in the U.S. but at least start to provide a bit of an educational framework for those Ohmies in other countries to consider things, because the challenges that a taxpayer would face, regardless of the jurisdiction, in the absence of guidance, is coming up with a position that's reasonable. And every regulatory agency may define reasonable a bit different. And so we wanted to kind of provide at least a brief, high level theoretical overview for how some of these things can be looked at and then can be adopted by Ohmies in their own particular country to meet the facts and circumstances that their country's laws may follow. Over to you, Omen.
Yeah. Go for it, Omen.
Right. Absolutely fantastic. Thanks for everything everyone has said so far. Absolutely right. I just wanted to add, a couple of quick disclaimers. One is, tax is never an interesting subject. And well, I shouldn't say never, but for the majority of people, it's never an interesting subject. So if you're here, you're kind of ahead of the game, and you're, putting in the work. If you're listening to this, you're clearly quite engaged. And yeah, I point number two, I would add, echoing Moonshine and Naga, there is a lack of guidance in this space. So quite frankly, some of our answers are probably going to be unsatisfying because we can't give you the clarity, that we would like to, because the clarity just doesn't exist right now.
Yeah, and that seems to be pretty common across everywhere in the globe, right? There's still minimal guidance on kind of like basic crypto concepts. So, let alone having tailored kind of setups in each country. When we're not really close to that, are we?
Yeah, well, that's kind of the table stakes when you're dealing with a transformative technology that really is threatening so many different industries, right? Not just industries, but established power structures, governments, corporations, etc. It's just kind of what you have to deal with.
Yeah, 100%. So, like, I mean, you touched on Moonshine earlier about the it being treated as property, at least from the information that is available on the IRS's website. Do you want to kind of go into more depth about that?
Yeah, sure thing.
With the information that already exists, obviously.
Right. So what's out there is there's a lot of guidance on property. Stocks treated as property. Houses, residential units treated as property as well. So a lot of CPAs and tax advisors out there are familiar with these type of transactions, or how the IRS wants to treat these. And the guidance that is out there, the IRS has released some FAQs and done a few kind of, I guess, shed some light on just a few things like hard forks and airdrops, sort of. But you can tell that they're still very unfamiliar with crypto terminology and the verbiage that's used. And they try to basically point to all these traditional finance transactions and scenarios when a lot of them aren't similar. But some things that are kind of black and white that are out there right now, provided by the IRS, is that they do treat crypto that's received for providing services as income. So just like you would get income for working for a corporation, or traditional income like W-2, they do treat crypto as income. So instead of just reporting it like you would receive a stock, you do report it like you receive income. So there are certain topics laid out in traditional finance, like fair market value, and capital gains and losses versus ordinary income. So ordinary income is what you receive for normal work, for providing services for a company. And then your capital gains, capital assets like stocks. So those concepts are applicable here with crypto as well, as similar to stocks. You hear a lot of things like um, tax harvesting. So what they're doing with selling for a loss as well. A lot of people talk about in the Discord these days. So a lot of those can you do this, can you do that, is not very clear yet.
Right. And obviously in America, it being treated as income isn't necessarily the case in other countries, right?
Exactly. So what's going on in the U.S. might be very different, depending on where you are from.
Oop, I think we accidentally
Yeah, it
lost
looks like
him.
we lost Moonshine, so I'll
That's all
sort
right.
of pick up, from
Pick
there.
up from where he left off. Go for it.
Yeah, so it depends on, like you said, where you are. I mean, there's jurisdictions around the world that, for example, don't tax capital gains at all. So an OMI in that jurisdiction will perhaps have a very different set of concerns, uh, than someone somewhere else. But to kind of provide again, because I've been in the traditional space for the greater part of my career. I've been doing this for almost 20 years now. So when I want to sort of think about things, I'm going to kind of start with that traditional finance framework and then work my way towards making analogies to the crypto and DeFi space, to the extent possible. And so if we think, going back to a really important point that Moonshine was making earlier about receiving crypto for services, whether you're working on a project for somebody and they decide to pay you in ETH instead of whatever your currency of choice is, or you're creating a meme and you sell that to somebody and they pay you in crypto. It's an easy way to sort of think about it is really, if you go back to a traditional finance perspective, is like foreign exchange. Omen is Canadian, so he'll do most of his stuff probably in Canadian dollars. But let's say he's working on a project for somebody in Germany and they may pay him in euros. Well, on his tax return, he'll have to do the FX conversion between the euro to the Canadian dollar and reflect that as income. So if an OMI is working on a project and getting paid in some cryptocurrency, then the same transaction would took place. Figure out what the value of that crypto is at the time of receipt relative to their functional currency and reflect that as income. So there's a few steps that we need to take in order to bring it back into the regulatory framework, and that's what we hope to kind of use those sort of analogies to to help the community understand the process.
Naga, would you like to maybe talk about, or anyone, I guess, would you like to maybe address also the connection between capital gains and, receiving tokens as payment, right? Because sometimes you get the token as payment, and that's ordinary income. But then what happens, for example, if the payment appreciates in value and things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So to sort of carry on that point is once we've made that, shall we say, conversion into functional currency and recognized that amount as ordinary income, in effect, that creates what us tax geeks think about as basis. And the basis is where we would then calculate capital gain or capital loss from, should we ever decide to dispose of that cryptocurrency. So to kind of use that same example again, let's take, I got paid 1 ETH for working on a project, and I'm just going to make up numbers here. That ETH at that point in time was worth 3,500 US dollars. I would recognize as ordinary income $3,500, pay the associated tax on that, and perhaps I decide I'm going to not sell that ETH, but I'm just going to sit on it. Put it in my Ledger wallet, or just leave it sitting on MetaMask, or whatever the case may be. Then let's say 6 months later, that ETH is now $4,500, and I decide to sell it. So I've already recognized as ordinary income $3,500 of that $4,500, and so that is now my basis. And now if I sell that ETH at $4,500, I would recognize a $1,000 capital gain. Now, depending upon the time in the U.S., and I'm speaking strictly from a U.S.-centric perspective here, depending on how much time has passed between when I recognize that $3,500 ordinary income and when I'm making the sale at $4,500, would then determine the character of the gain. In the U.S., if it's less than a year, then it's a short-term capital gain, whereas if I've held that ETH for a year or more, it becomes long-term, and there's different tax rates associated with that distinction.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense from a US standpoint. But I was wondering if we could maybe potentially touch on other jurisdictions that we're aware of, and how they might also treat crypto in general, and some of the kind of basic transactions.
Yeah, I can speak to Canada. It's not that different, quite frankly. Here, there's a distinction between business income and income from employment, but it's largely a distinction without a difference. Everything Naga said applies. Moonshine?
Sorry for dropping out there, guys, but I'm not too familiar with other jurisdictions, but with things like this, it's pretty easy to, if there's guidance out there, most is pretty easy to find, at least. So if it's out there in your jurisdiction, it should be pretty easy to find.
Gotcha. So if I'm an Ohmie who's listening to this, and this is intriguing, and I want to learn more about or at least use tools that can help me, are you guys aware of any interesting tools that are out there to kind of help calculate these things to then take to your accountant or lawyer in some circumstances?
Yeah, so I can, in the Agora chat, I think there's a chat, right?
Yep. Yeah. So you can jump down the. It's at the top now. I moved it at the top of community, so you can drop some links in there. We can pin them. But what we can also do is, when this is uploaded on YouTube, anything that we kind of mention here, I can link in the YouTube, so people have access to those tools as well.
Great. So I just linked in the chat what the IRS has published for the U.S. And that's their FAQs that I mentioned earlier, that kind of just kind of go into very general, what is crypto, or what is, virtual currency, what is cryptocurrency. And they talk about kind of general basic stuff like, what is fair market value? What should I value this at when I receive it? And stuff like that, where they go into kind of specific things like, hey, I finished the work, at this date, but then they didn't pay me until this date, and now the currency is worth more, or ETH is worth more. How should I treat this? They do kind of talk about that, at least.
Yeah, and Darren,
Yeah,
I've got some documents as well that I can send you, that if you could link, their public documents, so I'm not sharing anything that's private or confidential. That would be, potentially a helpful starting point that does touch on some of the treatment globally, where there has been, guidance issued, or if there is no guidance issued, then that's indicated as well, at least as of the date of
awesome.
publication.
Yeah, of course. You go.
So you
you
mean
go.
sharing the notion, Naga? Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, with that, I mean, I'm going to leave that. Obviously, that's Darren's, hallmark. But I was thinking more some of the big four reports, that we shared internally. Those are all public documents, and I think those could be helpful to the community.
Right.
Yeah,
The
100
Totally.
report talks about the different jurisdictions that have provided guidance, and it links where to go to find it. So I think that's really good that you pointed that out, Naga. If you scroll to the bottom of one of these documents that he can post, at every single jurisdiction at the time of writing that they looked at, they've said if there's guidance, where the guidance is, and then they've also said if there's not any guidance for that country.
Yeah, that's a perfect scenario, right? And in those countries where there isn't any guidance, obviously Ohmies seek professional advice. Nothing that we're saying today is meant to be, used to make any decisions. So obviously, keep that in mind. If things are unclear, always make sure you reach out to a professional accountant in your kind of local jurisdiction.
I'm also going to share absolutely to everything everyone said. I'm also going to share a tool here. Full disclosure, I haven't used it, and I don't know anything about them, but somebody shared this with me. Coinly, KOINLY.io, and it seems to be some kind of software that just goes through your trading activity. I guess they have APIs, like plugins with the with the major exchanges or something, and kind of tracks that activity or whatever, and spits out some kind of report. uh, I'm sure the tax professionals on this call are wincing right now and are like, hell no, you can't. And they're probably right, like caveat emptor, like just because a software says it can do your taxes doesn't mean it's a substitute for an actual human tax advisor, so but yeah, just thought I'd share the tool. Seems cool.
Yeah, now those are all great, starting points, and there's a number of software tools like that, whether it be like Token Tax, who's been very helpful to Ohmies, Zen Ledger, and other ones as well. But as you said, I mean, they're going to have it as a certain framework, and then it's really up to the individual Ohmie and their tax provider to figure out exactly what approach they want to take, especially as we move, from something that there is at least some measure of guidance to things that are more in the DeFi space where the guidance falls off significantly, and you're ending up making judgment calls.
Totally.
Totally right.
Totally.
Totally right.
And I would say, even, look, no one likes spending money on extraneous things that don't seem to provide an immediate benefit. But that, couple of $1,000s or whatever the currency might be that you spend on tax advice will save you, quite frankly, a lot more down the line. So that is, lawyers, and I realize this seems kind of biased because this is coming from a bunch of lawyers and tax people, but lawyers and tax people are the things you don't want to skimp out on, I guess.
Yeah, you get what you pay for, definitely.
100%.
And it definitely comes back around to save you from the bad guys, the Fed boys, so to speak. But one thing, some best practices to keep track of, what we mentioned earlier is your basis, or when you buy it. I gotta keep track of how much you spent it, how much you spent in your currency for how much you bought, and I'd also keep track of any costs that went into buying it, like gas fees, or if you had to, approve on an exchange, stuff like that, to approve your transactions. Those are all costs that would go into your basis. So keeping track of, the fair market value, also as well whenever you sell it or exchange it. And most regulatory agencies point to the fair market value as, whatever the price is in, that region's currency. So in the US it's dollars. Whatever the exchange price is, at the time is considered, the fair market value. So keep
Yeah,
track
that
of,
makes
when you buy, when you sell or exchange, and then, the costs, and then you take that to an advisor for help.
And
as
that's
kind of
oh,
Omen
sorry.
was touching. Sorry, Bo. As Omen was touching on, there are those kind of, if people aren't, looking to use an Excel sheet to track everything, then there are those kind of automated tools that you can work with and get a rough idea to then take to your advisor. Yeah, you go, Bo.
Yeah, I was just going to add a little bit to what Moonshine was, saying, because if we are, thinking about capital gains, uh, every Ohmies situation is going to be different. I mean, I'm sure, some of you guys, maybe some people on this call are, true OG guys that have been around since the very beginning, and they haven't unstaked and sold a single thing, and they bought everything in one shot. Speaking personally, I came, fairly late to the game, relatively speaking, and I bought so far in 4 different tranches. So I've got some coins that I've held for longer than I've held for other times, and my cost basis for those coins is different, and the amount of rebasing rewards that I have received over the time period has been different as well for each of those tranches. And so one of the things that, speaking, personally here, that I also made note of was what the current index was at the point of acquisition for each of the tranches. And then we'll obviously make note of what that current index is should I ever decide to unstake and sell, so that I'm able to, use a calculation to kind of determine if I'm, deciding to sell coins from a particular bucket, how much of those rebase awards I would associate with, a particular pool of initially acquired coins. If that makes sense to the listeners.
That makes sense to me. I mean, that was kind of the next kind of the next topic that I wanted to go into, is this like a little high level discussion of kind of what are the typical transactions for the majority of Ohmies, and how they may or may not be classified in certain areas.
It definitely segues into staking. I know there's been a lot of talk in Discords, and with Token Tax came in and talked with us about treating it potentially as a stock split. So one thing that we've kind of laughed at is a lot of people who are familiar with stock splits know that they don't happen every 8 hours. So something that we have here is quite interesting, where everyone's stock, I guess, so to speak, in Ohm is splitting every 8 hours. So if you look at it that way, what Naga was saying with the current index is, let's say you bought 10 Ohm, right? And now you have 20. Well, those original 10 Ohm that you bought, your basis in those is now half of what you originally paid for it, because you have twice as many. So let's say you bought them for $100, now your basis in those is 50, because you have twice as many, if you're treating it like a stock split. So that's why, we're talking about keeping track of your basis, keep track of when you bought things, because that's going to matter down the line, as you're going down the, DeFi rabbit hole, so to speak, and you're starting to enter in these complex transactions where there isn't any guidance, out there. So depending on if there, when, not if, there's guidance released, you'll want to have kind of all your ducks in a row and all your information together, so that you can, take whatever position you have to when it's regulated.
Yep, that makes a lot of sense. Did you have anything kind of else to add on, Omen or Bowtide?
No, totally.
I mean, we can kind of move into the question of kind of another common transaction is kind of staking and unstaking. So I know we kind of briefly touched on it earlier, but what could that potentially, like, what kind of information is out there to kind of classify that one in particular?
Yeah, that was actually a really interesting one because, in full disclosure, I'm just a 3-3er at this point, still kind of learning about, the other things that, I can do in this space. And so, out of my own, shall we say, rational self-interest, staking is what I, first started, looking into. And all of the guidance that I could kind of find was really going back to in the U.S. I mean 2014, and the world has changed in crypto dramatically since 2014. But it raises some good thoughts if you're doing a more traditional type of staking where let's just say hypothetically, and again, this is a US centric perspective, but you're like most people just getting into crypto, including myself. You open up an account on Coinbase and maybe you decide to, buy some, a token of your choice. And, if you leave it sitting on Coinbase, you can maybe get your 2% or 3% or 5% staking rewards for just holding on to it. In that case, the guidance that the IRS has issued is pretty straightforward. They're going to say, you started with X, now you have X plus 5. So each time you get one of those awards, you will recognize income at the time of receipt. So one could sort of analogize that type of staking as being similar to like an interest payment or a dividend payment from within a traditional finance perspective. However, you don't report it as a dividend or interest because this is property, according to the IRS, and not a security or an interest-bearing financial instrument. So once I kind of said, okay, well, that part makes sense for that piece, but it's not making sense in the Ohm space. So, what do we do? And, going through, some of the stuff and then talking to other Ohmies, we kind of got to that whole, scenario that Moonshine was talking about, and how the critical distinction exists with Ohm being a token that rebases, and how that sort of changes the effect of what the rewards would be considered. And instead of being considered as income upon receipt, you could make a good argument that would be supportable. I feel as something that would be analogous to a stock split. But it's also not that simple because I'm not just going to Coinbase and purchasing Ohm. We have to go through other mechanisms. I use Sushi Swap, and I know other people use other things. But there's transactions that go through at multiple levels in order to actually obtain my Ohm before I even can go to staking. So, I know that there's going to be a million ways if we're using Sushi Swap to actually acquire Ohm, but me still being somewhat new at this space, I kind of do it probably the easiest way possible and use a stable coin and then swap the stable coin for Ohm. Now, since I am using a stable coin that happens to be pegged to the US dollar, I may have, some minimal capital gain and loss when I affect that swap from the stablecoin to Ohm. The stablecoin is not going to fluctuate much. It's going to be like 1.0005 or 1.003 or something like that. So there's not a lot there that is going to make a significant capital gain or capital loss impact. But let's say I'm using something like Matic or something else, then I could very well have a recognition event between what I originally purchased, a non-stable coin for, and what the fair market value was when the swap took place, that I would have to recognize as either, capital gain or capital loss going into that swap for Ohm. Then, the next step, once we actually have Ohm, as we all know, we go to the app and we decide that we're going to actually stake the Ohm. Now, everybody may do something a little bit differently. Personally, as soon as I have my hot little hands on my Ohm, I go and stake immediately. Now, there's some practitioners feel that making performing the transaction of converting Ohm into S-Ohm also raises the potential for capital gain or loss, because there could be a spread in the price change between when that transaction takes place versus when you originally purchased the Ohm. On the other hand, if you're like me, that the second it shows up in your MetaMask wallet, you're hitting stake, you might have a very minimal slippage. Other practitioners will say that, because you're essentially treating something and swapping for something that's exchangeable one for one and a variety of other factors, that we actually don't have a taxable event. So I would say the two extremes is one side you have a taxable event, another side says you don't have a taxable event. And like everybody's been saying, this is one of those areas, because there is not clear guidance in a case specifically like this, that your judgment and what you're comfortable with and what your tax advisor might suggest is going to have a lot of bearing into how you ultimately treat that transaction. I would say that if you're doing it right away, the IRS is probably going to look for bigger fish to fry. If you buy the Ohm and then you wait 2 weeks before you stake it, then we have a different story. So it really turns back to facts and circumstances from my perspective.
Yeah. So I was wondering whether Moonshine or Omen had anything else to add, but kind of reiterating what we've already talked about, given the complexities in the way that some of these things may be treated, do you guys kind of agree it's really important that people look to kind of track their transactions in a organized fashion, or at least use a tool to kind of automate everything, and then use that to then seek professional advice?
Yeah, totally. I would, you got to track it. I would add that, a lot of, there's tools, and, different exchanges allow you to print out, export stuff to CSV and stuff like that, which makes it easier to more gives you more traction. Completely agree with everything that Naga said. The space is going to develop. I would add only that the vagueness that we have seen is not the norm. And the vagueness really only exists because this is such a new space. And we would hope, but we would also expect, I think, and feel free to disagree with me, guys, anyone else on the board. But we would expect to see the level of uncertainty go down. So we would expect things to become more and more clear, as this becomes more common, right? As these products, as yield farming and DeFi become more pervasive in the public mindset, in theory, we would hope that the regulatory agencies, and I'm not just the tax agencies, but everyone, right? As people get more comfortable with crypto, including like the securities regulators and the commodities regulators and so on, and of course the tax people, we would hope to see more clarity uh, shortly.
I totally agree. I wouldn't say if, it's when. These the can't wait to get their grubby hands on everybody's money, so to speak. So definitely keep track of everything. And a lot of the guidance out there is it's if you can have a reasonable basis for something, if you can reasonably back up your position, being like, all right, these are the rules, so this is why I'm treating it like this. That the regulatory agency might accept your position, and there's a lot of precedent out there for past transactions, that people can point to. So as soon as these start going mainstream and more, the I guess mainstream colors shed on what's going on, and hey, these tools are out there and people are doing this, awareness kind of leads to guidance and clarity. So I would
Yeah.
definitely say it's coming.
Yeah, it definitely is a matter of time. It's just a question of when, isn't it? I think another thing, I don't know if we touched on it, but for the Ohmies that don't know, you're able to essentially reduce your cost basis with the transaction fees. And that's pretty common across all jurisdictions. Is that right?
Yeah, so like whenever you buy stock, in traditional finance, you pay commissions or brokerage fees, those get added onto your basis. So effectively, since more costs went into buying it, it cost you more to buy that asset. Your cost basis in that asset is now higher. So, just to make the math really easy, say you bought something for 100, and paid $50 in fees to get it, then your basis now is both of those combined. So $150. So then if you sell it for 150, it technically rose in price $50, but then you paid another $50 and fees, then now you're looking, you might not even have a taxable gain. So definitely pay attention to all that, but also, whenever you're transacting, everyone's always talking about, oh, fees are high, fees are high. Yes, but, fees are factored in. So take that into account and make sure that you're tracking that as well. Also for your own, personal benefit, as fees can eat you up if you have a small bit.
Yeah, I'm wondering if you guys had anything kind of to add there before we kind of at least move on into more of like an open kind of Q&A slash kind of we can chat about anything, just because we've touched on like the general overview of the way that different jurisdictions treat crypto at the moment based on somewhat outdated guidance, and then we also kind of touched on Ohm related basic transactions, being kind of buying, staking, unstaking. So I'm wondering whether you guys wanted to kind of touch on anything else in this session, particularly because I thought it might be a good idea to wait until kind of Olympus V2 comes out to kind of go into bonds. I didn't think that was a good idea to talk about bonds, considering there's a major upgrade on the way. So if there's anything else that kind of comes to mind, that you guys wanted to touch on, then we feel free. And in the meantime, Ohmies, if you want to ask any questions, feel free to put it in the chat or raise your hand, and you can jump up on stage, ask a question.
The only thing I would add before we kind of go to questions is to look at the substance, or look at what is going on with the transaction, or what are you doing basically. right? If you're exchanging from one to another, right, or you're bonding, let's say, and you claim it, then you're exchanging it, right? You suddenly have acquired an asset. When you acquire property, that's usually a taxable event based on the current guidance, right? So with anything, first ask, what's going on here? What is going on with this transaction? And you might answer a lot of the questions that you may have or know where to go to answer them.
Yeah, and those kind of platforms or tools that kind of give us a little bit more guidance, or at least automate some of these things for us, so we don't have to note them ourselves. Besides Coinly, we can kind of work to create a bit of a list when we upload this to YouTube. For anyone curious, and if you guys in the meantime can think of anything off the top of your head, then I can quickly look it up and put it into the chat. But yeah. We had one person kind of ask, do rebases ultimately lower or raise your cost basis?
So
I'll
rebase
jump in. Sorry, go ahead, Moonshine.
well, rebase just broadly would lower your basis because now it's you have more of something, right? But it cost you the same amount. So you didn't pay more for it, but you have more of the asset. So conceptually speaking, if you have more of something but didn't pay more for it, then those cost you, each one of those cost you less, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. I just wanted to, I know we touched on it earlier, but it's always good to reiterate for people who might have missed it. We've got one question. Recording rebases every 8 hours for a full year seems relatively unfeasible. Is it profitable or probable that the IRS will try to even verify those retroactively, especially if there are no on-chain transactions for rebases?
Well, I mean, I obviously, have not heard of anybody who has Ohm getting audited personally, but using my experience dealing with, the IRS on client audits, uh, they, will obviously request, that kind of information. If you're establishing or claiming that you have a certain basis in a particular asset, and they decide to audit the calculation around that asset, then they're going to request your supporting information. In our case, I mean, we've got, and maybe Darren, this might also be a good idea to link. We've got some amazing Dune tools that various Ohmies have created, including one that is taxes related, and it actually tracks each rebase that takes place and the amount that Ohm was at the time of the rebase and the rebase reward rate and everything else. So I would say that information, is definitely available for Ohmies to use, and is really a helpful way to kind of gauge that. Now on the flip side, that's treating it as income received at each rebase. But if we take that capital gains approach, then I think we're focusing much more on those indexes, and there's other queries and such that exist relative to determining what the current index was at the time you made the acquisition. And then, obviously, if you're unstaking and selling, you can note what the current index is at that point in time as well. And we can share that query, to the community as well when we put up the show notes, because that will, really help somebody do the math that we described in terms of determining if you bought in multiple tranches, how much should be associated with a particular tranche.
Yeah, that would be awesome. We can definitely get that sorted behind the scenes for when we upload on YouTube. I know that you, Omen, wanted to potentially touch on at the end, at least the laws pertaining to kind of crypto being classified as, all different cryptos being classified as securities. Well, you're kind of welcome to riff off there, and we can kind of round things out there. And at the end, we'll just answer the last few questions that people have posted.
Yeah, thanks, Darren. Actually, nothing too crazy to add. I'm sure everyone has been following the debate across multiple crypto assets as to whether something is or is not a security, and whether the SEC will get involved, and whether it's a utility token or this kind of token or that kind of token. Bottom line is, we're still, you can just Google "is crypto a security token" and get more information that I can provide you right now. Like the answer for things like the answer for yield farming products is likely yes, and that may down the line at some point. Again, assuming that enforcement actually occurs by the SEC or other securities regulators, that could lead down the line to implications for Olympus as an organization, right? Which in turn depends on where is Olympus located, and so on and so forth, right? But really, it's quite up in the air, and I would add that for the first time I think in my lifetime, for sure, we're hearing talk of potentially a new regulator, right? Because on the one hand, blockchain products are kind of running roughshod over the existing regulations, and on the other hand, Web 2 is kind of screwing up and messing up. Zuckerberg, any chance he gets, he'll say something silly. And so people are looking at potentially a new tech regulator. So really, all of which is to say that the space is in flux, regulatory wise. The scope of these kind of offerings for these kind of products, it's very much in flux. And stay tuned, watch this space, I guess.
Yeah, I'm wondering if you two kind of had anything else to add, at least on that kind of note.
Not at the time for me.
No, nothing for me. And just say, keep involved with the conversations that you're interested in. And we're in a unique position where the regulation really isn't out there yet. So there's some big names that are trying to influence it. A lot of the community has a chance, I think, to make an impact on the regulation.
100%. I think it's on the DeFi community to try and liaise the best we can with some of the regulators and kind of governments alike. So I think that'll kind of happen over time. But the best we can do is kind of be transparent and open with as much information as possible, and then kind of, I think, go from there. We'll answer a couple more questions, and also Ohmies, feel free to jump up and ask any. But this is just our first little session, but we're kind of planning to do another one in the future where we kind of go into depth a bit more on maybe migration, token migration that's coming up in the next kind of month or so, and then kind of going through more advanced Ohm transactions, whether that's kind of your line of credit in the fuse pool, or liquidity pools, and then kind of going over Olympus V2, and maybe looking at going into certain jurisdictions in depth. So again, we really appreciate everyone for coming out, and this is just the first of many, and really appreciate Bowtide, Omen, and DaMoonsine for coming along. And we want to be just want to be conscious of your hour, and I know it's a Friday night, so don't want to hold you back with boring tax talk for too long. So we really appreciate you guys coming out.
We appreciate you for having us. We love to help out the community any way we can and stay on top of this, and especially answer any questions that you guys have. So we'd love to hear y'all's input on what you guys would like to have answered in the future.
Yeah, it's our pleasure. A lot of fun doing it, and looking forward to more discussions in the future.
Yeah, totally. And I just want to say, the audience, the size of the audience here has been pretty staggering, right? Like, we're recording this live, and we've had a sizable audience, so that's awesome. Shout out to the Ohmies.
Yeah, it's great to see 100 people here on a Friday night. So, and then Saturday morning for some as well. So, without further ado, Ohmies, that's episode 4 of Agora TV. We'll bring in the music bot. We can kind of chill. If anyone wants to come up on stage, have a little chat, welcome to. But that's it for this episode. Thanks for joining, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Pleasure. And just this one will be recorded. So we'll upload this on YouTube within the next day before the end of the weekend. And we'll kind of have some nice links and little summary, a little kind of outline of what we talked about specifically. And obviously your kind of written disclaimers, as I'm a mushroom, and a lot of these guys up here today are not financial advisors. This is purely an educational session. So please do not take this as concrete advice. And if other than that, it should be all good. All right, let me get this bot up in here.
Awesome. Very well moderated, Darren. Thank you for all of your, effort.
No, pleasure. It was great getting you together. Hopefully this session sparks more kind of accounting, legal, and tax experts to come forward and have more open discussions on where the kind of space is going in that realm.
Oh God, do we really need more accounting and legal and tax expert? No, I'm just kidding.
No, we only maybe we do it on a Monday, not a Friday. We don't want to make everyone's Friday super boring.
We're a certain breed. We're a certain breed for sure.
Exactly.
But Naga and Moonshine, thank you guys as well. Like great hearing your educated opinions. Yeah, not legal advice or tax advice or financial advice.
Yeah, strictly educational content, spitballing here, so to speak.
Maybe even entertainment. We should maybe say. I don't know.
OnlyFans coming soon.
I mean,
Yes,
I already have mine. Was I the only one that already? I set mine up already.
Yeah, it's OnlyFans, but it's only it's actual legal advice. That's the paywall.
That is hilarious.
Yeah, that's your new subscription service. That's how you onboard your new clients. I'm just loading up this trying to get this me bot going. It's very temperamental.
No, I said it in the chat. Special shout out to my bro IRL Hades for getting me into Omen in the first place.
Oh, shout out Hades.
That's big. Let's all thank the people that got us into Omen in the first place.
Yeah, drop in the chat. How did everyone find out about it? What's everyone's story? How did we come across Omen?
Not the Craigslist back pages, that's for sure.
I'd definitely be surprised to see a clipping of Omen on Craigslist. I'm trying to think of what's an Australian equivalent to Craigslist. I don't know if we have anything of. I think Craigslist is kind of unique in that sense. It's so random.
like random encounters on Craigslist?
Oh no, we're just saying. Like I was just joking, saying I'm pretty sure we won't have seen Omen on Craigslist. Oh, I guess we have Gumtree. Yeah, that's a good point, Gabe. Gumtree is definitely kind of similar, a little bit random. Definitely some weird stuff.
Right.
How did your Are you all good, Bowtied, with your? I know you had surgery recently, so I really appreciate you joining. You really pulled through here. I was very happy to move it back, but it's lovely to have had you join us tonight.
Yeah, thanks, Darren. Yeah, the surgery went very well. I had the post-op consultation earlier this afternoon, my time, and he was very happy with the results. So, keeping my fingers crossed, and it was cataract surgery, by the way. And then, should things continue to progress, they'll do the other eye in about a month. So, very glad that my days of some really blurred vision are coming to an end.
Awesome to hear. So we need you to be reading all the T&Cs very carefully. So we need your eyes. Very important.
Absolutely. The best of luck, Naga. Really appreciate you taking the time to be here despite the surgery. Glad to hear it's going well.
Thanks, guys.
Exactly.
I'm gonna take a quick cig break. I'll be around in the chat. Thanks again for having me on, guys.
Go for it, sir. I'm just these bots are very temperamental. They don't like listening to commands.
Looking forward to this funky music again.
The rise of the robots.
We started, man.
It's the rise of the robots. Enjoy your cigarette, Moonshine.
Thank you, Omen. Thanks for joining us. Looking forward to the next one. More Taxation Nation discussions.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure. Yeah. We do a little tax, as they say. I don't want to be out of line here, but I just want to mention someone in the chat just mentioned that they lost all their private keys in a boating accident, which interesting.
Yeah, amazing how those things seem to happen, and it's always boating. I always wonder if is it a canoe, a yacht, a catamaran. Get a little bit more creativity with that claim.
It's just the dog ate my homework. The dog ate my private keys all over again.
Pretty much. It's the scenario changes, but the theme is the same.
I mean, the problem with crypto people is they keep buying boats. Like that is that's the root cause, I guess, right? Like just stop buying boats, people. They're terrible investments, by the way, boats.
Yeah, they should just buy more Ohm.
Buy more Ohm, yeah. Oh man, this is a great conversation. I think we lost DropkickDarren there for a sec, or is he? Maybe he's back.
I'm back. I just had my my robot wasn't. Yeah, my robot wasn't letting me talk to you guys.
This is what the Terminator was trying to warn us about, I guess.
Exactly. For some reason, Discord just makes it really hard for you to kind of navigate certain, a lot of their open spaces are just really clunky.
I think all the platforms are dealing with that, right? Like I don't know if you've used Twitter Spaces, but also seems
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, so Agora, we do a weekly Twitter Spaces on Thursday, and what we use like a we kind of were able to use one of those like virtual machine thingies where you can essentially use your computer to do it, and then kind of stream on two different devices, which is just so complicated. Like it's just not fun to organize because you have to have it set up on the computer so you can use your good mic. Otherwise, it's just through your phone, right? The quality is not very good.
Right.
I guess I get
How's my audio quality? Just curious.
it's actually really nice.
Not too bad.
It's
Okay.
very very crispy. What kind of mic do you have?
No. That's why I was asking. I don't even have a mic. I'm just using my MacBook Pro, but I'm just kind of holding my face close to the screen. But this is my MacBook from like 2014. You know, it's like my backup
Mm.
laptop. But Apple makes good. So I don't know. I just was like, I'd probably they probably have a good mic in there. Seems to be all right. Good to hear. Thank you for that.
No, that's good. I mean, I bought an actual mic, and sometimes mine sounds horrible. So it seems like you're doing better than me.
Blue Yeti or whatever, one of those.
No, I definitely didn't buy that one. I bought a kind of I'm trying to think of the brand. I think it's like a Sonus. I don't know quite. I'm not quite sure about the model, but I need to spend a whole weekend figuring out the optimal streaming setup, and then figuring out how to like properly set up my mic so it's 100% crispy 100% of the time. So yeah,
Sounds pretty
it's
good.
just
It's really good.
it
I will
sounds
say.
okay. Okay. Maybe I think you
Really
can.
good.
So in the settings you can kind of play around and put kind of compression on it and things. So I might try and make a custom kind of setup so I can sound even crispier.
Yeah, totally. And some of the Discord things have like the active noise canceling and stuff. Like if you're in the stage kind of thing or whatever.